More than 25 years ago, two young men wrote songs about the journey they were on. But life happened. Families, careers, the songs were lost. That is, until recently, when the original demos were found in a cardboard box. Now, with those songs rebuilt, remade, and released, Shon and Marcus are sitting down with their sons Austin and Samuel to talk about what they were trying to say all those years ago. This is Hidden Tracks, a conversation across generations about songs and the lives that led to them.
Hello and welcome back to Hidden Tracks, a behind-the-scenes look at the songs from the first Twin Wolves EP, Spectral Hymns. As always, I am joined by Shon, Marcus, and Samuel. I am Austin. Today's track that we're going to be getting into, no pun intended, is called This Is Literal. So, literally, what was this about? What brought this on? What is the genesis of this literal song?
Okay, yeah. I remember where this song came from, and it came from a strange sort of habit that I have. And I found out that a lot of other artists have done this over the years, and they call it marginalia. And usually when I was taking a class at university, I would jot things in my margins in my notebook. If a teacher mentioned a good book that was deep, or a poem they love, or a song they had encountered, or a movie I ought to watch, I would jot it down, or just neat things they said, because I recognized these folks were smarter than me and ahead of me in life. And so I would jot things in the margins. And one day, I wish I could remember what it was a reference to, but the professor was saying, well, isn't it refreshing that this poem we're reading is entirely literal? This is literal. There's no metaphorical. It is what it is completely. And I wrote, "This is literal" in my in my margin, and it made me think as an artist that I so often write poetry and write song lyrics that are metaphorical and metaphysical and kind of hidden. And I think that a lot of that comes from the 90s. You go back to your grunge bands and whatnot, and it's like no lyric was really straightforward. Yeah. It means something else, and our generation just loved that. I mean, we ate it up with a spoon. But I took that as kind of a challenge. What can I write that would actually be just what it is and just be completely literal? And of course, I was in that same mindset as for Summerfield, the song, because what I was trying to write about was the joy of experiencing God. The awakening that I had in my life. I just wanted other people to feel that it wasn't something that I was doing to be religious, that my faith had an absolute joy to it. And so the song kind of soars along, but I mean, as far from a lyrical standpoint, it's literal. That's all it was an attempt to do, was just bring myself out of the clouds and get boots on the ground for once.
Yeah, we called this one in the narrative arc of the album, The Cry. And the refrain, there's not much of a chorus in this song, actually. It's just a couple of lines, and it just says, "I want to know you." And it's after crawling out of this persistent natural self that we talked about in the last episode with Stimulant, of saying, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm crying out for help. I want to know you. I want to be better. I want to do better. And the thing that I like about the progression of the verses is at each kind of end of each section of each verse, there's a line about reaching out. And it says, I reached out with my hand or whatever, or I reached out with my eyes and this sort of thing. But the real revelation never comes until the end of the second verse, when it says, I reached out with my heart. And I thought that's a pretty cool way of showing how we sometimes try to understand our spiritual journey in a tangible, physical way. We want to touch it, doubting Thomas, so to speak. We want to put our fingers in the nail holes. But until we get to that point where we reach out with our heart, with our spiritual side instead, that's when the real revelation starts to happen in our lives.
And that's the part Shon added too. I better mention here that This Is Literal began with me, but then all of the soaring part about, I reach with my heart and finally you're revealed, that was Shon. I began it, but I think he took it to where it needed to be. So this one's very much a collaboration.
It's funny hearing you guys talk about it being like a collaborative process when it came to lyrics, you kind of handing it off, because I know you had mentioned like one song ago, that you guys very often would write something, and then once you have block, hand it off to the other person. Me and my best friend Jack do that very frequently. You had mentioned that you didn't think many people do that, but me and Jack kind of do that artistically sometimes as well.
Surprise.
Yeah. But my original take on the lyrics of the song was, I've heard both of you mention multiple times that you always have a really easy time writing metaphorical lyrics, and you always have a really easy time writing literal lyrics.
Yeah, he's trying to be me.
So when the song opens and it says, "This is literal," I literally just thought to myself, "Oh, it sounds like Shon wrote this." But it's funny hearing that it was you trying to be more literal, because I just assumed it was you talking about being literal.
Yeah, I was adapting a new style. So
Yeah,
good.
man,
I mean, young me would be pleased that you felt that way, because that's very much what I was trying to do.
All I kept thinking, listening to it, was, I feel like I'm back in Summerfield, and
Yeah.
Those songs are kind of bookends.
Yeah,
totally.
it's the return. Yeah.
And funnily enough, I made the note afterwards, though, that if Summerfield is the genesis of friendship and spiritual awakening and where the memories begin, Cedar Row is the return, is the prodigal son coming back home, is the realization that I've had it hard and I've made it hard on myself. If that's what Stimulant was on the journey, that I've put this upon myself, Cedar Row is coming back home.
This is literal.
Sorry, yes. This is Literal's coming. I'm so sorry.
No,
this
you're
is
good.
Literal's coming back home and making the realization, and finally ending with Cedar Row being absolution, so to speak, where you feel lighter at the end. And I make a note of that later that I'll talk about when we get there. But this is Literal being that, and we've talked about this, that declarative joy is the sound that you guys make when you, these tracks in particular, Summerfield and this one. It's not just that you observe that y'all are joyful. It's no, we are announcing and we are showing you very proudly how happy we are, and shows, the opposite of how melancholy and how deep and dark it does get in the other two. And I can't wait to hear the second EP, because I know it's going to be more of the duality of, if this is the joy, the darkness. So.
Yeah, it tells the same story, but just in a very different kind of way. But yeah, I think that's right. Summerfield was, it's called the opening in the arc, but it's sort of like a discovery. Like, wow, here's this new thing. Mm-hmm. Is this real? Could this possibly be happening? And when you get to this song, it's like, no, that happened and I want it. Yeah. That's really the declaration you're talking about. I want to know you. Yes, you can like me, and I'm comfortable with all that now, and I know that I'm still going to make mistakes and have problems or whatever, but this is what I want. Yeah. I want to grab this and choose it. Show me how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To me, this is where the album begins to really show you that this is not some kind of linear journey of faith, and life isn't that way either. There are setbacks, there are valleys, and there are peaks. And this part is the peak to me, when you're at that point of saying, okay, I've been through a lot, but I know at this point what I literally want. And there's kind of a crying out for spiritual reality that is in it, that I appreciate, because I think that's something that our pastor taught us, and Shon's father, was to not settle for status quo religion and just church for the sake of church, because anybody can put on a suit and go and act like they're having an experience, but to have one is complicated, and people want to make it very straightforward and uncomplicated. And the truth is, when you try to really live in that way, it's going to demand a lot of you. But it rewards you with moments like This Is Literal, where your feelings are powerful. And that's always how we wanted to live. And I think our younger selves especially wanted to really pull like a Henry David Thoreau and live deliberately and suck the marrow out of life. We wanted to have what we couldn't find in the adults around us. We felt like most people lived lives, as they say, of quiet desperation. I think that was Emerson who said that the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, and we didn't want that. We wanted to have, the bombast of this is literal, even if it meant that there would be these other hard things. And I think that's reflected all across both of the EPs. And This Is Literal may be my favorite track on this one for that reason, because I can just feel it every time I listen to it, and it reminds me to stay youthful and not let the old man that I'm becoming win. You lose that inner youthfulness. Those guys would have wanted to slap us had we lost the joy of just living, just being. There's a purity to that, I think.
I think it's really cool that what I've noticed is that the story of the EP so far still fits perfectly with kind of the theme of seasons that I gave it. Where I had the idea of Invisible being kind of a wintertime isolation, Summerfield being this summertime happiness, but still being, having questions, can you like me, not even really understanding your spiritual relationship at all yet. And then it almost felt like Stimulant was that step back, kind of entering winter again, having more isolation, making mistakes. And it feels like we've gotten back to summer. And now, instead of it being, can you like me, you've recognized, oh, you can like me. And now it's instead of like wanting to know that the people around me or God can like me, wanting that relationship opposite. Now me being like, I want to know you.
Yeah.
It's a moment to be savored.
Yeah.
I think you come to those realizations in life that, and we've talked about this a bunch before, to know you're in the good old days while you're in them. Because there's always a backward look of, why didn't I realize how good things were when they were good? People are forever doing that. That's a lesson that I've learned in just the last few years, is to appreciate moments when you're in them. And that song is very much, This Is Literal, is the appreciation of a moment while in it.
So then for a natural way, I had actually a pretty decent question here. If thematically these returns to, if you're saying the summer for the theme here, what goes into that production-wise for you? Does the production of Summerfield kind of line up similarly with this as far as how you had a vision in your mind productively?
Yeah, I think so, just in terms of joy. But what this one felt like to me, and it is fitting that you said summer, because what I always say, this is like a driving song. Like I'm going to be driving down the highway, I'm going to roll down the windows, and I'm just going to turn it up and let it play, and I'm going to sing along and all those things. I mean, I've always felt that way about this song, and even from the first time I read the initial lyrics, that's kind of the feeling it had for me. Funny enough, though, when we found the original demos and I listened to it, it was a little bit flatter than I recalled. It was a little less energetic, and so the production, when we went through this, I wanted to kind of lighten it up and kind of bring that energy back to it. And so part of that was instrumentation. I wanted to add some organic instrument, acoustic guitar and banjo in it. The tempo's bumped up a little bit too from what it was. I think any artistic project that you work on, it's never quite finished in your own mind. This is one of those things where I feel like now when I listen to it, like maybe it could have been a little bit faster even. Like I could have bumped it up a few more beats per minute. But I think it sounds great the way that it is. So focus on really in terms of the production notes was the intro, because the introduction is that kind of where the bright energy comes from right off the bat. So I'm going to play some build up, and then I'll play the full clip. See what we got here. So these are the synths that are underneath that intro, because it's got to have some space for that banjo to breathe. So this is what's actually underneath it that you probably don't even really notice when you're listening to it. You just kind of know it's there. And then these strings, there's a cello drone throughout the song as well. So when it starts over here, this time the banjo will be with it. And you think about how raw that banjo would sound if it didn't have that ambient noise underneath it. And then even more so by adding in the guitar. So that's sort of the layering effect to get to the full clip of that intro. The building of the energy and that kind of light feeling. So I think it did what we were trying to do to kind of bring back some of that energy, bring back some of that just kind of pop even into the sound by getting the instrumentation right, getting the tempo right, getting the EQ right. It's not mixed. It sounds very different from the tracks before and after even, because it has a little bit of a different mastering finish on it. It sounds a little more poppy, a little more Counting Crows maybe than Radiohead or something like that. So. But love the way that it turned out, and I think what was in my head of it being a driving song, a windows rolled down song, definitely came through.
Absolutely.
I was glad that you brought that out, because to get a peek into that process, I never heard that droning note under there until you just isolated it. All I heard was the banjo.
Right.
So it yet again kind of highlights the fact that Shon is quite a good engineer, as far as putting together music, because he can put stuff in there that you feel and you don't notice. That type of subtlety, I think, is sorely missing from a lot of music. That, like as you mentioned, Radiohead a while ago, they're masters at doing that. There's some weird sound like sleigh bells on
Airbag.
Yes,
Yeah.
On Airbag. You don't even hear those sleigh bells till you've listened to it, or I didn't. Till I'd listened to it 1,000 times.
You pointed that out to me.
Yeah.
I've listened to OK Computer hundreds of times, and I had never noticed it until you said something.
You're too busy with the other elements.
Well,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that, my approach in general, you hear sculptors talk about this, where they have this big hunk of marble and they ask, well, how did you end up with what you did? And they say, well, I just kept taking pieces off until what was left was what was supposed to be there. And I always thought, that sounds kind of pompous or pretentious or whatever. And I'm sure it will sound that way when I say it too, but it is very much the process with that stuff. A lot of times I'll start with a lot more in the overall mix. And my kind of litmus test is, if I mute that track, do I miss it or do I not? Like, do I care that it's not? Like, it's under there. I've probably 15 times took it out and said, does this make a difference that this isn't there or not? And then put it back in. Same thing even with volumes, getting the fader levels right and stuff. It's a bit of a process, but it's mainly starting with more than you need and chiseling away until it's like that's what it's supposed to sound like. Like, you start with a picture in your head of where it's going to go, and you just keep tapping at it till it gets there. I know my dad does art now, wood art and carving as well. He's like, I just keep whittling at it and messing with it until it looks like it's supposed to. I know when it's done.
I was thinking that too, because I was with him this past weekend and he gave me a carving that he had made. I know he made one for you too. Well, what you don't know is he made you a pen and he made me a sword. So we've got the pen, and we'll always be arguing which one is mightier, But he told me that. He said, I'm looking at a tree branch, and then it's like, what object is hidden in here? Yeah. And how do I reveal it? And I thought, I've never really created anything that installed meaning by taking away. That's a different concept to me.
Absolutely beautiful. And it comes through perfectly, just as you've described. I can't give it a bigger endorsement than that. I truly urge you to go listen to it as well, to feel these exact same things. Please, give yourself a gift and go listen. That's all from us here. Thanks for watching, y'all.
This is how I feel. Take your hand, tell me, are you real? 'Cause I've looked with my eyes and oh, but I can't tell. And I've searched with my hands and I'm searching still. Listen, little, and this is how I feel. I used to know you, I used to know your name, and I speak with my mouth, oh, but you're not there. I guess maybe you are, I'm just not seeing you very well. This is how